Hello, Dave. You are up first, sir.
Good afternoon, Bart. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, Dave. So you got a hand for us here?
Correct. So this hand comes from the Borgata out in Atlantic City.
Ah,
Was playing a cash game there on this past Thursday night.
last time I went down there to Philly, we hit up the Borgata. I played a little 8160 mixed game. Is this a 2-5 hand or?
This is a 2-5 hand.
So 2-5, and this is a 1K cap, if I'm correct. Is that right? It's a 1K cap?
Correct. It's a 1K cap game.
All right, so 1K max buy-in, and how deep are you guys?
So for this hand, we're 955 effective.
Okay, and is this like a daytime game or?
No, it was. I was actually out there. Borgata's running a tournament series right now, so I was playing a tournament, and then, went over to play some cash that evening.
Okay.
So the way the hand played out, under the gun limps, under the gun one also limps.
Okay.
Then it folds to me. I'm in the hijack, and I have ace of diamonds, four of diamonds.
Mm-hmm.
So I raise to 30.
So you raise it up to 30, and if you're going to say like 20 without a limper, you're just sort of adding a couple big blinds in there. Okay, so raise to 30.
Correct. Yeah, as my general rule, at cash games I always raise to 4x and then just tack on the amount of big blinds, however many limpers. So that's why I went to 30.
Yeah, I like that.
It folds back to the under the gun limper, and then both of the limpers call.
All right, so both limpers call.
We've got a pot of $90 going to the flop.
All right, so kind of a standard-ish setup in 2-5, two limps. Man, I see so many limps at 2-5 Encore where I play. It's just crazy. And you ISO to with ace four diamonds to 30, which I think is perfectly reasonable. They both call. Just what would you have done with like ace six, ace seven? Any suited ace here as a raise for you over two limps?
Great question. Maybe if I had like ace six of diamonds, maybe I would have limped. But it's definitely with ace four, the possible wheel draw, I'm always going to be raising that hand.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I don't know how limp, heavy this game was, but you talk about like what if like 3 or 4 people limp in? Do you start to have an over limp range? And I think some of the weaker suited aces you can put into that over limp range with 2 people, and ace four diamonds, I have no issue with it. So we're 3 ways, $90 to the flop. Okay.
Correct.
Yep.
So the flop is 5 of clubs, 3 of hearts, 2 of hearts.
5 of clubs, 3 of hearts, 2 of hearts. That looks like you flopped a wheel there, Dave.
Exactly. So excellent flop for me.
Okay.
So, now of course it's a matter of how we can build a pot.
Yep.
Both of the limpers check.
Uh-huh.
I bet 40, so just under half pot. So I'm sure you'll give me your thoughts on that sizing.
Yeah, let's talk about this sizing here, even before you go on to tell me what happened, just because I had gone over hand with aces in a 3-bet pot where I actually got stacked last week on the flagship podcast, and it was on a wheel board like this. And I was talking about when you have aces on a wheel board and what are some of the hands that call you with. Here's the thing, like I would probably go much, much larger here on this flop because they're either gonna have like a limped in pocket pair or like Broadway types of holdings like queen, jack, king, queen, you're not going to get the action from those anyways. And if some guys are playing some like ace X's as a limp, ace 10, ace jack, whatever suited aces, the interesting thing about that on a wheel board is that it's 2 overcards and a gut shot. So I think that you can easily go 70, 75 and you're still going to get action from those hands, any limped over pair, things like that. So I mean, I look at this board different than like if you flop like a set of 9s on like 9 deuce 3. I would actually go larger here because of what I construct as a limping range, and you're just not going to get action from the offsuit, the Broadway types of holdings anyways, like jack 10.
Right. Okay.
So you go 40, okay. And there's 2 hearts out there obviously too.
Correct.
Yeah.
The under the gun calls and under the gun +1 folds. So now we've got a pot of 170.
All right, so your head's up here next to act calls, which should be a slightly stronger range. We always talk about that. And it's 170. Okay, on to the turn.
Yep. So the turn is the king of spades.
So just a big old brick, right?
Yeah, so we get the disconnected high card, as
Yep.
you like to talk about.
Yep.
Under the gun checks as
Hmm.
expected. On this turn, again, the pot's 170. I bet 135. So I guess I'd like to hear your thoughts on the bet sizing here as well.
Well, this is where I might actually play a little bit of an unbalanced, in a somewhat of an unbalanced way in live poker, where if you had started, some sort of like bluff with a flush draw like Queen Jack of Hearts, this is a great barrel card for you, right? And you can do a lot of like large betting here on the turn. But in live poker, sometimes I try to look at the range and try to kind of figure out what I want here. Like you've got the nuts here. The king is very, very disconnected. Now, it's possible that they could have a hand like King X of Hearts, but I might actually make kind of a handcuffing. Now, I would have gone larger on the flop, right? But I might kind of make a little bit of a handcuffing bet here of maybe like half-ish pot, something like that, because I want to, once you go 135, I just think that sevens and eights and stuff like that are just going to fold out. So I might just want to have it so that those hands feel like that you're trying to like get a cheap price on a bluff, just because it's such a disconnected high card, and there really shouldn't be a whole lot of King X represented here from the UTG limp, except if it was King X of Hearts. That's it.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you go 135.
Yeah, maybe my thought process at the time, I think, was I thought that this villain might hang on if they had any of those middling pairs that sometimes you see people limp from under the gun, just because a king, like being a bluff card, that, and maybe I was overthinking it at the time, but thought that, okay, he would hang on with that, and I'm at least charging him a price for flush draws that are sticking around. But that was my thought process.
There's a lot of people in live chat saying overbet, full pot size bet, 250 plus. And we talk about trying to get stacks in. I understand that theoretically, if you wanted to keep like a balanced approach to this turn card, absolutely, you could absolutely take a full size pot size bet or an overbet. I'm just saying that when I think about what a UTG, and I said I might actually play this a little bit unbalanced, where I might take that sizing with bluffs. But when you take a look at the UTG just range there, I think the card is just so bad. I mean, I don't think that betting 135 is terrible. That's just my take. So you go 135 and he called again?
Correct. He calls, so now the pot is 440.
All right, so UTG calls. And now 440, and it looks like the guy's got what, there's about 750 left effective stack, something like that.
Correct. Yeah, I've
Okay.
got like 750 behind, and he's got roughly 850 behind.
Okay.
So the river card is the 5 of diamonds.
So 5-3 deuce king 5, right?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Under the gun then leads for 350.
350. Wow. So 5-3 deuce king 5. He's leading here for 350. And again, we talked about that he pretty much started with about 750 effective stacks. So this brings up a couple of things. I mean, we'll go through the hand reading here too. I find it very, very hard to believe that this guy has a boat as played, just with check calling flop, especially with the guy next to act on the flop, just check calling turn. And then now all of a sudden he's leading the river. You beat like a hand like ace 5 that might stick around, right? It wouldn't surprise me actually if you're actually going to get shown down a bluff here, like busted hearts or something like that. But this brings up another sort of concept that we like to call reverse pot odds on Crush Live Poker, which is basically like after the 350, the guy only has 400 left. So if you were to jam here over the top of his, say, like 350, I believe that the pot would be right around like 1550, like 400 for him to call. So he'd be getting like incredible pot odds here. And God forbid, if he did have a hand like ace 5 or 5-4 or something like that, he's just never going to fold. There's no way he's going to fold for 400. So not only do I not find it all that likely that he's boated up, of the hands that he actually might have value with, you're beating trip 5s, and he's never folding any of those types of hands. Once in a great while, I know this is kind of a strange one, you actually might see a guy like be turning something into a bluff here, and then he gets curious and calls down anyways. Like he didn't know what to do on a 5 he had 7s and he bets, and now you raise all in and you're like, oh, this guy just has pocket kings. I'm going to call with like 7s or 8s or something like that. I would just say that I think that the play here is definitely jam for 400 more, but it wouldn't surprise me if the guy's just going to snap fold. I don't know. I definitely don't remember the results. If if people in the live chat saying snap call, snap call, snap call, I just, this isn't a bluff. Snap call with 400 left. You're not gonna jam all in here for 400. I would definitely jam all in here. The chat seems to disagree with me here a lot. I just don't see sets being played all that often here. I mean, if you were deeper, I suppose you could make a case, but I don't know, for 400 more, it would just, I think I'm jamming here all day long. What ended up happening? What did you do?
So it's funny. Here's why I wrote this hand in. I've been a sub for a few years now, and turn the clock back 3 years ago, I would have responded the way I see people in the chat responding, like instant call.
Now people are saying jam, jam, jam after I gave my thoughts.
But I went through the hand reading just like you did, and I thought this guy could not have flopped 2 pair, could not have flopped a set. I just do not buy that he has a boat. I think he has a hand like ace 5 or 4-5, 5-6, something to that effect. So I thought through it and I jammed. He did not snap call.
Well, that's good. Right. If you didn't snap call, then you're almost always winning, right?
Yeah. And so I figured at that point, I knew, I'm like, okay, well, I have to definitely have the best hand here.
Yeah.
I just didn't think I didn't think he would have 4-6 ever as far as like limping from under the gun.
Right. And I just want to interject something. I want to interject something here too. For people that are saying that a guy is going to slow played a set, right, with a guy next to act behind or 2 pair, played it as check call flop, check call turn. I feel like guys that are going to do that are going to check the river too, to try to get you to bluff or possibly to value, instead of going check call, donk lead here for 350. I mean, it's a little bit weird. I mean, I have seen that line before, but it's just a little bit incongruent if he was slow playing it the whole way. And you should sort of have an easy value bet here, with a hand like, with the ace king or something like that. By the way, I will say though, if I had like aces or ace king, I am going to call because people will represent this card a lot, like on some sort of busted draw. You don't raise, right? Because you can't beat a 5, but I would call given the pot odds, I would think. This is why when you jam here, it wouldn't surprise me if the guy just snap mucks, but it sounds to me like he might call here. Did he end up calling?
So he did end up calling. I showed my hand. I was good. He then flipped over his cards. He had ace of hearts, 5 of hearts.
Ace of hearts, 5 of hearts. Well, there you go. So ace of hearts, 5 of hearts. I mean, that's a big hand from that. So he flopped a straight flush draw with a pair, and just played it as a check call turn, and then he just donk led the river. It's interesting on the turn. If I had played this hand from his perspective as just a check call on flop with a guy behind me with a nut flush draw, that turn card is such a good barrel card for you, and it's so strong. If I check raise like jam or check raise turn here, if I'm your opponent, I think I would have. If I called flop, I'm going to check raise turn with your opponent's hand, because I think you might have a lot of nothing. And then if my hand doesn't improve and you triple barrel off, it's a really tough call for me to make. Now you might give up, but I just, if obviously you had ace 4, so you would have snap called like if you check call turn, but like if you had ace king or like aces or something, or you were betting like queens or jacks, right? Because the king's disconnected and you were going to take a showdown, it's a really hard call for you to make on a check raise on the turn.
Right.
That's how I think I would have played it, but nicely played. I'm glad that you used some of that crush lab. Were you thinking about reverse pot odds at all?
I was, because I did. I looked at the amount and I said, okay, well, if I jam here, he's a couple of your quote exploit. Well, I mean, I was going to be all the way in anyway, but I knew he'd have a little money left behind. And when you look at pot odds, I mean, it's still he only needs to win about one is about 20% of the time, 20 to 25% of the time.
Well, I think he's getting like 5 to 1. It's even less than that.
Yeah, almost 5 to 1.
Yeah. Well, nicely played, Dave. Appreciate it. Appreciate the call.